How are we doing, guys? And welcome back to TSTV for the weekend review of the Premier League games. And we start off at the London Stadium. West Ham 1, Chelsea 5. Now, obviously, being a Chelsea fan, I have had a few bad experiences watching us play against West Ham, either at Upton Park or the London Stadium. So when Cole Palmer goes off in the warm-up, when Lucas Paqueta scores after 5 minutes, you're sitting there thinking, here we go. Even after we equalised, to be fair, they had a goal that was disallowed, and you were thinking, God, this looks like one of these mad games that could happen. West Ham started well in the game, and we were a bit slow to come out the blocks, and I think maybe that was due to the fact that obviously Cole Palmer gets taken out very early on. It's obviously West Ham's first home game, and we're kind of trying to figure out sort of how it's going to work without Cole and João Pedro playing in there instead of him with Esteval out on the right. And I think maybe we were kind of discombobulated a little bit and just didn't really kind of get to grips with the game early doors. West Ham obviously scored a good goal from Paqueta, although I think Robert Sanchez should do better. Esteval obviously makes a little bit of a mistake giving the ball away. That can happen. He's 18. I think he's only a baby, so that's going to happen. Caicedo could have done better closing down, but was still a good strike. And then from there on in, after we went 2-1 up, really, through Pedro Neto, because as I mentioned, between our equaliser and the second goal, West Ham had a goal disallowed. It was absolutely pathetic from West Ham. And I think it was one of those rare occasions that even though you're a Chelsea fan, you want to hear our team get praised a lot, because to win 5-1 away from home, you still need to play well. You still need to take your chances. You still need to control the game. And once we got our foot on the ball, that happened. But I think West Ham really are the story here, just for how, well, embarrassing it was, the nature of the collapse, fans trying to get on the pitch, fans streaming out after half an hour, no fight, no passion, just really insipid, slow football. And, you know, knowing quite a few West Ham fans, they thought it was totally unacceptable. From a neutral's point of view, I would have said the same thing. Obviously, I enjoyed it being a Chelsea fan, but it was just far too easy for Chelsea to go 5-1 up with almost half an hour to go, and it could have been a lot worse. If Cole Palmer was playing, he would have exploited all the spaces between West Ham's midfield and defence. He would have picked passes for fun, and he probably would have got on the score sheet once or twice as well. And also the fact that Chelsea pretty much called off the dogs for the last half hour, 45 minutes. We had a chance through Esteval from a brilliant pinpoint through ball by Reece James. But really, we just went through the motions, which you can understand. Obviously, it's been a truncated pre-season. From West Ham's point of view, just absolutely shocking. And I wouldn't have thought Graham Potter has long left. His next game before the international break is Nottingham Forest away, and that is a very, very tough assignment, and wouldn't surprise me if a change is made there. But good performance, great victory from Chelsea. But yeah, really troubling times for West Ham. The Saturday early kickoff was Manchester City 0, Tottenham Hotspur 2. This hex that Tottenham have over Manchester City is just extremely weird. I was watching the game, the Friday night game, West Ham Chelsea, with a few of my mates who are Tottenham fans. And they were like saying, oh no, we really don't fancy us. Obviously, the whole Eze news got them all down, I think. And obviously still maybe feeling the effects of last season. And I just said, your record against Man City is absolutely ludicrous. I think you'll probably go there and get a result. And that's what happened. They put in a superb performance. As I mentioned last week, Thomas Franks really adapted well at Tottenham, and he has adapted in every game. So PSG was a different game plan, Burnley was a different game plan, and City was a different game plan. They weren't just there to sit back and let City have the ball and soak it all up. They really pressed them very high, and that's how they scored the second goal through João Pedro. A really poor mistake from James Trafford. I'm not really sure why he was trying to play the ball out from the back there. But yeah, defensively, the Spurs look really, really sound. They look dangerous going forward. I think they still definitely need to do something in the transfer market, because one or two injuries, especially to Romero or Van der Ven, could really derail things. But Kudus and Paulinho look like they've settled in well. Richarlison looks like he's really embracing his new role under Thomas Frank. It's, really, really positive outlook for Tottenham. And I think at the moment, I still think the top four will probably be what the top four was last season, but I think you've got to make Tottenham strong favourites at this moment in time for fifth. They look really, really impressive. As for City, it was a little bit the same as last season, really. They just didn't really know how to break Tottenham down. A lot of the players that looked so good last week, Reinders, Cherky, had very quiet games. Haaland had a quiet game. It was just a bit of a bland, ordinary performance from City. I think everyone kind of maybe went a bit overboard last week about Man City, because Wolves struggling and probably are going to struggle this season. But yeah, I think maybe the truth is a bit in between of what we saw against Wolves and what we saw against Tottenham. I still think there's holes in that squad, and I still think defensively they look very, very shaky. I don't think structurally they look as good as Arsenal or even Chelsea at this moment in time. And yeah, I think there's some work to do there for Man City, but I'm sure they still will finish in the Champions League spaces, even if they don't potentially win the league. Next game is Bournemouth 1, Wolves 0. Not really much to say about this game. Bournemouth got a very early goal through Tavernier, deflected strike. Semenyo went really, really close with an effort that hit the bar. Bournemouth, again, looked very, very impressive, especially in the first half, following on from what they did at Liverpool last week, and should have really got something from that game. Wolves had a couple of chances in the first half. I think they had a header from Strand Larsen, which could have gone in. But the game was really over as a contest once Totti got sent off in about the 50th minute. And from there on in, Bournemouth just kind of saw the game out. Wolves didn't really carry a threat, and the game really petered out. But yeah, it's a very good win for Bournemouth. And yeah, a very worrying start for Wolves at the start of the season. Then we go on to Turf Moor. So Burnley 2, Sunderland 0. And now all three of the promoted clubs have won in their first 2 games. It's the first time it's happened, I believe, in 9 years. And that is very, very encouraging to see. We want a competitive relegation race. The last couple of years, it's been very, very boring. It's been very, very obvious pretty much from the outset who's going to go down. You want a competitive Premier League across the board, and I do think the 3 Premier League, 3 newly promoted teams are going to be very competitive. Really, really good win for Scott Parker and Burnley. Sunderland did have a couple of chances, particularly earlier on. Mayenda really should have scored from about 5 yards out, but hit it straight at the goalkeeper. And from them, we know what Burnley can do at home. They're very, very solid, even though they've lost Egan Riley and Trafford. Scott Parker's got them really well drilled. They've obviously got the experience of Kyle Walker at the back now. And I think they will pick up a fair amount of points at home against teams in and around them because they can keep clean sheets. Jaden Anthony scored a really good goal, took it round the goalkeeper into the roof of the net. Josh Cullen as well, really lovely finish after about 50 minutes. So yeah, Burnley, I still think they'll probably go down, but they will pick up enough points at home to, I think, at least keep it competitive. And I think that would be the case for all 3 of the newly promoted sides, which is really refreshing. And Sunderland, yeah, just a bit after the Lord Mayor's show, really. Great performance against West Ham. Bit insipid here against Burnley, but I still think they can be really pleased with the start of the season after the first home game, and I'm sure the next game will be absolutely pumping at the Stadium of Light. They can get back on the horse pretty quickly. The other 3 o'clock kickoff was another big result for a team we would consider maybe down at the bottom. Brentford 1, Aston Villa 0. Now, I've tipped Brentford to go down this season. I'm not going to change my mind, although they do look slightly better than Wolves and West Ham on the evidence I've seen. Really important win for Keith Andrews to get up and running early doors. It can be very easy in the Premier League, especially as you're a new manager, to go 4, 5, 6 games without winning, and all of a sudden people start asking questions. You're under pressure, but they've beaten a decent Aston Villa team 1-0 at home. Dango Chara scored his first goal after his record move from Bournemouth. The game was very, very bitty. Villa looked very undercooked, very poor. Looked like they really weren't going to trouble the score sheet at all, particularly in the second half. They had a couple of chances in the first half, I think, through McGinn and Tillemans. But yeah, second half, it looked like Brentford were going to see that game out very, very easily. And maybe there is some concern there at Villa, because I had them to finish 5th at the start of the season. I thought with Unai Emery, I thought with the continuity in the squad that they'd kick on. But yeah, they just look like they're stagnating a little bit. And obviously, look, we're in the second week of the season, so it's really early to draw conclusions. But I think they need to do a little bit of business before the window closes out. But yeah, great result for Brentford. Great to kind of get that first win for Keith Andrews, and it just quietens the conversation about them potentially struggling for the rest of the season. If Johan Visser doesn't leave before the end of the transfer window, that would be massive for them as well. So yeah, well done to Brentford, a great win for them. The 5:30 kickoff on Saturday was Arsenal 5, Leeds United 0. Now, I watched this game and I thought for 35 minutes Leeds did really well. They had a couple of chances. They really restricted Arsenal to very, very few opportunities. It looked like they were really sort of bullying Victor Gyökeres. Strauch at one point really had the measure of him, but as soon as that first goal went in for Arsenal, it was game over, really. Arsenal absolutely ran all over them. Obviously, the first goal comes from a set piece during Timber. He also scored a bit later in the game. Saka then absolutely roofs one. I think the goalkeeper should do better just before half-time, and then from then on in, it was a bit of a party mode at the Emirates. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres scores a really, really good goal at the start of the second half. Takes the defender inside, cuts inside, and then beats the keeper at his near post. So for his point of view, good to start the season with a goal, and especially one from open play as well, because I know he scores the penalty at the end. But I think if, say, for example, he hadn't scored, but he just got given the penalty at the end, yeah, it would have been great for him to score the penalty, but it would have, I still think, maybe not felt quite the same as scoring a really, really good goal on your home debut in the Premier League. So well done to him. And obviously Max Dowman, which was probably one of the biggest storylines of the game, comes on at 15 years old, wins the penalty in the last minute. Looks very, very bright, very, very talented. God, there's some really great looking young players in the Premier League at this moment in time. You got Dowman, Ruben Gamuma, Staval. Talent is frightening. So yeah, he could be a really, really special player for Arsenal and England, hopefully. England more hopefully than Arsenal for me personally, but I'm sure from an Arsenal fan perspective, they hope he would be the next big thing. But very, very comprehensive win for Arsenal. Leeds kind of gave up the ghost a little bit at 2-0. The season won't be judged by games like this, but Arsenal obviously have tougher tests to come. They go away to Anfield next week, and that will really kind of be an indicator of where they are and could they go on and win this title. Now on to the Sunday games. So a real grudge match. Crystal Palace 1, Forest 1. I guess maybe it was the result that would have created the least animosity. If either side had won, maybe there would have been problems with the police, because I think there was a little bit of trouble beforehand. I predicted 0-0, but the game from the highlights looks a lot better than that. Ismail Assar scored a really good goal. I think he's a really good player, done really well since he's come to Crystal Palace. And then Callum Hudson-Odoi, former Chelsea boy, scores at the start of the second half. Igor Jesus hit the post. That would have been an amazing goal. And Forest probably were the stronger team towards the end of the game. But I think the whole conversation around this match was dominated by the talk of Nuno and his comments before the game, which, I mean, maybe that's a different video, but it would be ridiculous if Forest or Marinakis got rid of Nuno. He's done an amazing job there. And obviously there was a lot of conversation around the whole situation with Palace and Forest, and one of them being in the Europa League and one of them going to the Conference League, and then Forest complaining to Cass about Palace. And I think there was a tifo that Palace put up in the stands, which I think they might be getting into a bit of trouble for, depicting Morgan Gibbs-White and Marinakis. So yeah, honours even there. Decent game. And yeah, I'm sure both sides will be probably quite pleased to get it out of the way early doors, and they can just focus on the rest of the season. Another big game at the 2 o'clock was Everton 2, Brighton 0. Everton in their new stadium, the first ever win, and Iliman Ndiaye scored the first ever goal at a new stadium, and he also scored the last ever goal at Goodison Park. So that's a nice quiz question in years to come. Jack Grealish obviously got 2 assists as well, and it's good to see him up and running at Everton, because I think there's a lot of people maybe doubting that move and saying, well, will it be the same Jack Grealish? Is it just going to be one of those moves, a bit like Sterling at Arsenal last season, which just goes badly wrong and he's in kind of football obscurity? But he looked really bright. Players from Brighton were always gravitating towards him when he had the ball, and he's going to be a big player for Everton. I think he's got the personality to really be a fan favourite at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. And I thought the stadium looked amazing, by the way. They obviously showed shots on TV, and I thought it looked really, really impressive. And again, you see sometimes stadiums without fans in when they just first open them, and you think, looks a bit bland. But when all the supporters were there, it looked really good. It still sounded very, very hostile. Great day for Everton. Great day for David Moyes. And yeah, I'm sure that they'll kick on from this at home. I think it could become a bit of a fortress. I'm not really worried about Everton in the slightest. Brighton had their chances in the game. Matoma hit the bar. Welbeck missed a sitter. He also missed a penalty. And he was in my fantasy team as well, which didn't go down well with me. Yeah, they'll be fine, Brighton. They'll pick up enough points. I think it was always a bit of a poison chalice going to Everton's new ground in their first game, and some things are just meant to be. So yeah, they'll be fine, Brighton, and they'll go on to bigger things. 4:30 kickoff. Fulham 1, Manchester United 1. I think the big talking point of this game is Bruno Fernandes missing a penalty. He kicked off a bit because just before he was about to take it, the referee barged into him a little bit, and it wasn't deliberate. It was just probably the referee trying to talk to another player and forgetting where he was looking and bumping into Bruno. But Bruno came out and said that put him off. I don't really buy that. You just go through your process again and relax. But I guess in sport and in football, particular marginal gains are a big thing. He plays the penalty over the bar, and then in the second half, Iora, well, It was actually a Rodrigo Muniz own goal, but Lenny Yoro heads the ball onto Muniz, and Man United go 1-0 up. Calvin Bassey, who was penalised for the penalty in the first half, felt it was pushed by Yoro, and it looks like he was really. So that should have been disallowed. I'm not sure why it was, and this is what people get fed up with VAR because it's so inconsistent. But in the end, luckily, it didn't really matter because Emil Smith-Rowe scored with about 15 minutes to go. It was a well-deserved point. I mean, it was a pretty nothingy game, really, other than the sort of 2 goals and penalty. I think Cunha hit the post in the first half, and again, he looks very, very bright. But yeah, Fulham will be okay this season. They've got a good enough team and squad, even though they haven't really signed anybody. I think they'll just, kind of be in mid-table, float around sort of to 14th for the rest of the season. And it probably won't be what Fulham fans want to hear. They'll probably want to kick on, but it's still a lot better than other clubs and what other situations clubs at the moment are in. So yeah, fair result. And for Man United, they've got Burnley at home next week, so they're really going to need to get 3 points on the board there. And then we move to Monday night's game. Now, last week I did the match review on the Monday because obviously I think Leeds-Everton probably wasn't worth waiting a day to bring the review out, but I always knew Newcastle-Liverpool would be a massive game. It was mouth-watering. The whole kind of behind-the-scenes stories of Isak and Liverpool. Is he going to stay at Newcastle? Is he going to go to Liverpool? The kind of animosity there between the sort of 2 sets of fans on social media and probably the 2 clubs at the moment. Hugo Ekitike looking like he might go to Newcastle, but then going to Liverpool. Under the lights at St James's Park, it was always going to be a cracking game, and boy, did it deliver. It was a brilliant game to watch. Liverpool won 3-2. But I thought they were extremely lucky. Newcastle absolutely battered them pretty much for the whole game, including when they had 10 men. For the first half an hour, Liverpool couldn't get a kick. They were absolutely all over the place. Newcastle looked very, very dangerous. And if they had Alexander Isak or a decent centre-forward on the pitch, they would have won that game pretty comfortably, I think. They were absolutely all over them in the first half. And then Ryan Gravenberch scores a goal against the run of play from distance. It takes a little deflection. That can happen. You've got to try your luck, haven't you? And you got to buy a ticket to win the raffle, right? So it goes 1-0, and then Gordon gets sent off just before half time for a ridiculous challenge. Now, when I first saw it, I thought, it looks like a little bit low there. Maybe it's a bit harsh, but he's scraped down his Achilles. He's just gone like a bull in a china shop. I don't know why he's done it. I don't think he was deliberate or malicious, but just reckless and stupid. That's cost Newcastle the game, ultimately, because within 20 seconds of half-time, Hugo Ekitike puts Liverpool 2-0 up. He looks mightily, mightily impressive and a really, really good acquisition. He's slotted into life really, really well at Liverpool, no pun intended, in terms of Arne Slot. But then Newcastle get back in the game. Bruno Guimaraes scores a header, really poor defending from Kerkez. And then the game was just mad. Newcastle were absolutely hammering Liverpool, throwing everything at them, set pieces, crosses, long throwings. Liverpool could not cope. And then the goal came in the 8th minute. Osula scores, bad mistake from Konate, letting the ball go over his head. Dan Burn flicks it on, Osula nips in. And then for about 7 or 8 minutes of stoppage time, Newcastle looked like we're going to win it. Liverpool still couldn't get out. It was crazy. This was the champions. Liverpool, 11 men down to Newcastle with 10 men, and they just couldn't get a kick. But, football is just crazy sometimes. And none other than Rio Ngamoa scores the winning goal in the 100th minute. 16-year-old comes on. He's an impressive talent, let me tell you. He's going to be a top player. And it's obviously a bit galling from my perspective because obviously he started out at Chelsea, was in the academy for 8 years. I know people at Chelsea that have worked with him, and they told me about him before he moved to Liverpool and how he was going to be an incredible player. So yeah, to see him in a Liverpool shirt do that is very, very galling. And from a Chelsea perspective, you just hope that the talents we bring through in the future, we don't let go of, and we can give them a chance in the first team and allow them to flourish. But he's going to be a brilliant player. And even though Liverpool winning in the last minute, it's always a bit like, ugh. But it was an amazing moment. I think if you had to pick someone to score that goal, and for a narrative point of view, you'd say, okay, the 16-year-old lad that's come off the bench to make his Premier League debut, that's what you would choose. But brilliant game, brilliant advert for the Premier League. Really rounded off the weekend superbly. So yeah, that is the weekend review, guys. Some really interesting games in there. Some games that were, okay, not so interesting. But it's only the second week of the season. There's a lot more to come. We got our last set of fixtures before the first international break coming up this weekend. So I will do my predictions later on in the week. So until then, take care of yourself, guys, and I'll see you soon.